All right, people. So, hey, Christmas is coming up. It's weird to say, right? But yeah, everything seems to be, that whole fucking prep. Lights are going up, all of that. And all the Christmas movies are starting to come out. Now, a new entry to the ilk is Puppet Killer, right? Which you might think, hold on, Puppet Killer? A you know what I mean? A new Christmas movie? Well, kind of, right? It is kind of framed around Christmas. So, yeah, I guess you would call it that, right? So it is a story that was created by Lisa Ovies and Kevin Mosley. Ovies then directed the film, and Mosley wrote the screenplay. Our cast, we have Jamie, played by Aleks Paunovic. That's the older Jamie. We have a young Jamie, played by Jet Klein. And then other two iterations of Jamie, played by Lyric Carr Boyles and Weston Grunen. Right? Jamie's dad, Richard, is Robert even is played by Geoff Gustafson. Jamie's girlfriend, Jessie, is played by Lisa Durupt. We then have Jamie's friends. There is Lee, played by Cassie, and his girlfriend Brooke, played by Gigi Saul Guerrero. You've got Curtis, played by Lee Majdoub, and his younger brother Rick, played by Richard Harmon. Right, so that's our main group of people. There's Susan, who's played by Ovies herself. I think that's kind of the main group, right? That's the kind of main group. And the gist of the film is, well, it's this, right? So for 7-year-old Jamie, watching horror movies with his loving parents and his fuzzy pink puppet Simon is a beloved Christmas tradition. Unfortunately, that all ends when his mother dies of cancer and his father marries a new woman who isn't really, that supportive of Jamie's horror obsession or his unhealthy relationship with Simon. After she mysteriously disappears from the family vacation home, Jamie starts to believe that Simon may have killed her. 10 years later, Jamie brings 5 of his high school friends to the family's cabin for Christmas break. All seems well until Simon is discovered in the cellar. Dum dum dum. Resurfacing Jamie's old fears, causing him and his friends to question his mental well-being. As the weekend unfolds, Jamie's friends are slaughtered one by one in ways that would make Freddie, Jason, and Michael proud. Jamie must confront his childhood best friend in a bloody showdown that will push him to the brink of madness if he isn't already there. Yeah, people. So that's it. That's Puppet Killer in a gist. Right? Now, it starts off, but you have young Jamie, right? Young Jamie, and his mum is all super excited, and she's just like, hey, let's watch a horror film. And the dad's just a bit like, all right, I mean, but isn't Jamie too young? And she's like, no. And so they're watching all horror. Then she buys him this big puppet, which looks a bit like a Sesame Street puppet, right? Elmo, I think. Is that the red one? I don't know. But he looks a bit like that, right? And he loves the puppet. He takes the puppet everywhere. He talks to the puppet, all of this craziness. But yeah, his mum dies of cancer, right? And I mean, there is a scene where they're sitting there and she coughs into her hand and it's covered in blood. Husband doesn't notice, which you're kind of like, she's sitting right next to him. How the fuck? Like the hand would be covered in blood. How is he not noticing that shit? It's crazy. But yeah, unfortunately, she dies. Eventually, you know, he marries again, which again, with the way it's played, you're like, wait, what? You know, because they have an argument. Because yeah, she's not a fan of Jamie's puppet, his horror obsession, all of this, which I kind of feel you would have known before you marry her, right? I'm sure there should have been signs like she feels this way before you get married. But yeah, they have an argument. She leaves, which is an odd one, right? Because they don't live close to anything. And you think, where the fuck is she going, right? Shit goes south, and we then jump forward. We jump forward in time 10 years. And you see Jamie in an office talking to a woman, and you're like, this is at school. But Jamie and all his friends are played by adults, which it takes you a minute to be like, these are school? Is this school? Is this college? Right? Because at first, I think you kind of think maybe it's a community type thing, right? It's university. There's older people can be at university. You know what I mean? Because you see younger kids in this place. And so you're like, huh, what is happening? But then you figure out what they're doing. And it's like, okay, all right, let's go with it. And yeah, Jamie invites her friends to the cabin, and it's a weird one because it's only when they're there that he's like, "Oh, I had a puppet," and that, and you're thinking like, these are best friends. You kind of feel they would have, at least one of them would have known this shit before this time, but everything's fine until yeah, they go into the cellar, and yet the puppet just suddenly appears, gets brought up, and that's when everything goes crazy. Now, what you kind of get is this is kind of playing on horror tropes, right? It's kind of playing on horror tropes and that whole thing of when you have like grown people playing kids. You know what I mean? Like, how many things have we seen this in? Yeah, like you think of a lot of your favorite films back in the day that were, meant to be kids, and then you realize how old people, like even the shows. There wasn't many shows, where they were actually young people playing young people, which is always just like, what? So it's playing on all of that, which can be, look, we've seen it done and it can work. I think one problem here is, though, that they're playing it too like kids. They're trying to be too much like kids rather than just playing being them, right? And I think that's the key for something like this. You just have to play it, right? So, like, although I don't love Pen 13, they're not necessarily acting kiddified, right? They're just being them in this setting of kids. And that's what makes it so odd and funny at times, right? But that's not what you get here. Like sometimes they put on like trying to be like, oh, but I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, you know when you're dating a chick and she tries to do that kiddie voice and you're just like, no. You're like, what are you doing? I'm not down with that. That's why I'm dating adults. You know what I mean? Can we stop? And yeah, so it's throwing on kid voices and that kind of thing. And that whole, hey, chase me. It's just a bit like, I don't know, man. I that created a little bit of a disconnect for me, you know? And then because in the story itself, like you have Curtis all the time going, hey, right? In a horror film, everyone splits up, so we don't split up. In a horror film, no one knows where the keys are. So, people, the keys are in my front right pocket. Okay? That's where the keys are. Or no one goes down in the cellar alone in a horror film because you die. So, there's all of these things. And you think, right, it's going to play it like, hey, we got to do this because that's what they would normally do. But they don't, right? So you'll have one person go off into the woods and you're like, but throughout the film, they've been saying, don't go do this on your own. So why are they going like, you know what I mean? There's no reason for a lot of shit that goes down to kind of go down. Like, it's a point when they all run into a house, and then for some reason, one of them goes back outside. And it was just like, there's no reason for you to go out. Like, what are you doing? You know, which made it a little odd. Didn't quite, yeah, for me, it didn't quite work in that sense. You know, I would say that direction wise, the film looks good. The film looks good, and you know, the shots work, everything like that works. There was just some disconnects in the story. Like, I don't think we needed the twin situation, right? The twin situation felt like a different film, kind of forced into this one. And you're like, huh. Because the setup for them doesn't play into the film in the end, right? So it's just like, why do we need, like, why did we need that if it doesn't play in? So you wonder if anything was cut out. But yeah, so you kind of wonder about that, and you're why are they here? Doesn't quite make sense. You know what I mean? And then you have this thing at the end, like at the very beginning, we see one of the girls throw stuff out of a van, which you just think to yourself, hold on, why would they do that? Right? If you saw Jamie do it, it might make a bit more sense, but to see this girl do it, it doesn't make any sense. And the fact that it's done in front of his dad, right? This thing happens in front of his dad, which that was another kind of odd thing, right? You think, why is the dad turned up in a weird hat? I don't understand what this scene is, right? Because it didn't really make any sense. But yeah, they did this thing in front of him. But then later in the film, we get this whole situation where they're saying, this happened. And you're like, yeah, we saw that happen at the beginning. And he saw it because he was standing right there. You know what I mean? So it was just like, huh? But then they don't really talk about it. Because I think if you talk about it at the start, you then create this whole thing. of who really is it, right? And I think if things were shot slightly different, not giving too much away, there would be that who actually did it, and it throws that down, which then would make that last scene really like, oh shit, but we don't quite get that. Now, I will say, right, I think if you're a fan of, the scary movies, not another teen movie films, right, and probably not the first ones, but the later ones, right? And then we go deep into the franchise, and they started to really scrape the bottom of their references and all of that. If you really enjoyed those, I think you'll enjoy this one. Not to say this is terrible, but I just think you need to be able to separate yourself from a level of realism to be like, okay, yeah, I get this. Which I understand is a film about a killer puppet. So of course you're separating yourself from realism. But you feel me, right? You have to be able to go, no. I'm not paying attention to the logic of that. I'm just down with this. Right. And if you can, then I think Puppet Killer will work for you. Okay. But people, it is, if you want to check it out, right? If you want to add it to your Christmas time horror activities, then lucky for you, is coming to all of your favorite VODs on Monday, the 29th of November. Okay, people. So, yeah. Are you a puppet, a muppet? You love Christmas? This could be for you. All right, Puppet Killer.